Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs, like Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, which provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership training and mentors. And Journey to Esquire, the blog, which provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com.
Hi, it's Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the nonprofit behind this podcast, Journey to Esquire, and our blog and the Scholarship and Leadership Program. I'm so excited today. We have a new guest, and we're passing the mic to Briaunna Buckner Durhal, and she participated in the Appellate Project inaugural Mentorship Program and is passionate about ensuring our highest courts reflect our communities. So we're going to learn more about the Appellate Project, but before we go into that, we're going to hear from Briaunna about her journey to Esquire. So let me just give you a little info about her. She's currently serving as a judicial law clerk for the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. And before that, she served as a law clerk to the Honorable Bernice B of the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, and we love Judge Donald. She is a fierce advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. She has her Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice, an M.P.A. in Public Administration from Jacksonville State University, and she also got her J.D. from the University of Michigan. Is that right? University of Michigan, right? Yes. Okay. During law school, she had some great summer associate positions at well-known, very prestigious firms, Skadden, Arps, Slate, Meagher, and Flom. She also clerked at Lightfoot, Franklin, and White law firm, and she got a clerkship with the Ranking Member's Office for the United States Senate Judiciary Committee. So that's an important group. They get to decide who the federal judges are going to be. She received numerous awards in law school. She was an advocate. She won the Campbell DeLong Trial Advocacy Competition, and she was history making. She was the first female African American to be appointed to the University of Michigan Supreme Court and the first female African American to be named Young Alum of the Year at Jacksonville State University. She's also passionate about pro bono work and did a lot of things through the legal clinics and externships while she was in law school. And in her free time, she loves to spend time with her daughter and fiance, Zola and Fred. And by the way, she's a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, so she's an AKA for all you AKAs out there. Welcome, Briaunna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I have to make a correction. I probably should have updated it, but this is now husband Fred.
Okay, Fred, we corrected it. Husband Fred. He's like, wait a minute. So I don't have to celebrate that first anniversary. No gift for you. So her husband Fred and her daughter Zola. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And so, like I said, it's great that you were in the inaugural mentorship program, and now you're a board member, because we have someone from our inaugural Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program who serves on the board. So it's definitely paying it forward. But before we get there, let's talk about your journey to Esquire. So what made you want to be a lawyer?
Yeah, so it's funny because I started out as a pre-med major and got through that program until I was a junior going into my senior year of college. And I did an internship and realized I do not want to pursue a medical career. And so I was sitting in the living room with my dad one day, and it was a summer where a ton of trials were nationally televised. And so I couldn't help but notice that there was no representation. No Black women were sitting on these trials. And I had a conversation with my dad about it. And he was like, you're in this place now where you're trying to figure out what's next, especially now that you know that the medical field is not a career path that you want to pursue. And he's like, I think you'd be great at that. And because I was just so passionate about there being some sort of representation, especially in trials that impact, a different community, mostly criminal cases impact mostly minority communities, and there was no representation there. And so I went back to undergrad the next summer, my senior year, and I took a class from a professor who was the only Black woman on Jacksonville State's faculty in the criminal justice department. And she graduated from Howard Law School, and she was teaching constitutional law. And the way in which she taught that class, and kind of like the lens that she gave us into her personal experience practicing criminal law, just really drew me in a way that made me want to learn more about it. And that kind of was my first start into wanting to pursue this profession.
That's outstanding. So yeah, law school is full of pre-med majors who just realized, yeah, no, this isn't for me. But they had the academic rigor, right? Because that's what you need to get through law school. And so if you can make it through pre-med, you can make it through law school. But also that's interesting because, I grew up watching TV. That's the only place I saw lawyers, and Matlock, Perry Mason, they don't look like us, right? So it didn't occur to me that would make a difference. Obviously, as I got older, I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is not, a fluke. That is the trend. And it helped to motivate me some more. What were those trials you were talking about? Do you remember which cases they were?
Yeah, it was Trayvon Martin, and then shortly after, Michael Brown.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for me, it was like the O.J. Simpson trial when I was in high school. That was the first televised. I mean, they shut down all TV shows and everything to broadcast that trial. And there weren't many Black women. There were some on the team, but they weren't the ones, right, getting the camera time. But that really made me think, wow, this stuff really matters, even though it was tragic circumstances. Let's talk about your application process. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so the application process for me, I really went into it not knowing anything. Like, I didn't know about the best law school rankings. I didn't know about to value what types of programs or what professors teach there, to kind of learn be an understudy under some of the leading practitioners in the field for whatever it is that you're interested in. I really didn't know a lot. And so for me, that process was really just narrowing that information gap that I had to understand where it would be a great place for me to study. And so at the time, I was just graduating undergrad, and I decided, because of that information gap, I decided to pursue a master's in public administration for 2 years to kind of give myself an opportunity to mature. I had just had a child, so I was a new parent. And as far as the law school process, I needed time to study for the LSAT and kind of figure things out. And so when I finally got to that place where I was applying for law schools and I knew what I was looking for, I really wanted a place that valued family, but still presented the opportunities for me to be able to pursue a career path that I thought would be meaningful. And so at that time, the place landed on being University of Mississippi, which for me, because I was already in the South, I was in Alabama, my University of Mississippi provided extra resources to be able to help me to put my daughter in daycare. Those are things that first generation and older law students have to think about, is if we have a family, how do we make this law school thing sustainable? And so for me, that was kind of Mississippi had the wraparound resources to be able to help me do that. After my first year of law school, I'm from Michigan, so I started thinking about what the transfer portal would look like and needed additional assistance to be around my support system. And Michigan was a great place for that. And so for me, the professors at Michigan, there were certain professors at that point I knew that I wanted to pursue an appellate career. And there were professors there like Dean Kamenker, who was a pivotal piece in the affirmative action line of cases, was there. And that was something that interested me. And so I decided to apply to transfer, and that's, that's kind of all she wrote.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I was wondering how you got from the South all the way up to frigid Michigan. But if you're from there, then that's home, right? So we've had a lot of guests who had kids in law school. So we love hearing about how you manage that, because that is something that will stop a lot of parents from considering law school. It just seems daunting. And I wish more law schools did what University of Mississippi did, right? With wraparound services and care. And but at the end of the day, no one can help you like family and friends.
Yeah.
And having a support system makes a big difference. So now you're in law school, and we talked about some of your accolades. So did you enjoy law school overall, and how did you manage to do all those things while having your daughter?
I loved law school, and I think I loved it so much because I did what I wanted to do. This is what I tell a lot of people. You get great advice in law school about what classes to take, about what organizations to join. But I think that there's no greater path than the one that you carve for yourself, like knowing yourself, knowing what gives you fulfillment. And I did those things. So I joined the clinic. I'm huge on pro bono, and I'm from Detroit. And so it gave me an opportunity through those clinics to serve the inner city. I got an opportunity to write briefs to the Sixth Circuit, helping to advocate for indigent people who are accused of crimes. I had an opportunity to co-write amicus briefs to the Supreme Court to help clarify a consumer ruling that they had that needed to be clarified. I had an opportunity to help small businesses in Detroit in their startup stage, so that they could help secure their copyrights or put together like employee handbooks. And so those are the types of things that really give me fulfillment. And so I decided to do those things as opposed to maybe take like a jurisdiction class. And so I think that when you're in law school and you have multiple demands, like taking care of a child and making sure that you're doing the adequate amount of studying and that you're being involved in the things that you want to do, you want to make sure that you tailor your schedule to where it gives you an opportunity to cover all of those bases.
Yeah, that's very true. You get your priorities in order very quickly when you have a child demanding your time. I have a 1-year-old now, but I had a about to be 9-year-old. So, for a while, I was able to just have a lot of flexibility. And now it's like, nope, okay, priorities in order. These are the 5 things I can do today. And then after that, it's all about my daughter. And so that can actually help parents in law school. It really helps you stay focused so you don't get distracted. But that's a great piece of advice. Carve your own path. One of our scholars just said that. She felt lost in law school her first year. And when she realized she could make her own path and pursue things that she knew she would enjoy, not only did she enjoy it more, but her grades increased, which is always a good thing to note, that you're a whole person. So you can't just isolate academic and then, be miserable every day and think that's going to work out well. So you did really well. You clerked at some great places. What was it like when you were trying to figure out, okay, what is going to be my next step? Do I go and be a summer associate at one of these big law firms and make the big bucks and work the long hours? Or do I do a clerkship? Or do I pursue, some of the stuff you did in your legal clinics and externships? What was that like for you?
Similar to law school, I kind of did everything my 1L summer. So I clerked for a mid-sized but big regional firm in Alabama. and also clerked for a litigation boutique because I knew that it was litigation because I loved law school. Like, I loved reading the cases. I loved writing. I knew that that's kind of like I was narrowing in on litigation, but I didn't know what I wanted that practice to look like. And so I tried both. And then I decided to work for a wonderful U.S. magistrate judge in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to see if I would be interested in clerking. I didn't know much about it, but a ton of my professors said that I should look into it. And so I decided, okay, well, let me give this thing a shot for 3 weeks and see what it looks like. And so that summer, when I was working for the judge, I had great conversations with her about what the clerkship life would look like, what the responsibilities would be if I were to clerk at different courts, which that's a whole other universe that I had no idea about, that clerks at the magistrate level versus the district court level versus the court of appeals, the job looks very different. And so that opportunity that I had to talk to the judge every day was just really being a sponge. And so she asked me, well, since you loved law school, would you ever be interested in clerking for a U.S. Court of Appeals judge? And for me, I'm like, yeah, sure. Like it's a very prestigious position. I'm a 1L. We don't even know what that universe looks like yet, but I would be interested, but it just felt so far off. And I hadn't seen many Black law clerks, to be quite frank. We would have law clerk panels at the law school. There was never any Black law clerks on them. And so it just seemed very remote for me. And so randomly, a couple of weeks into my internship with the judge, she asked for my resume, and I was kind of taken aback because I had been working for her for a while. And I was like, uh-oh, why does she need my resume now? And so fast forward a couple of days later, and I go to, the judge comes and gets me and asks me if I want to go to a bar association event. And while I'm there, she takes me, the event's in a hotel, and there's a U.S. Marshal there, and she says, is she here? And the U.S. Marshal says, no, she's already gone to give the speech. And so I'm still in the dark here. I'm not sure what's going on. We go to the event. There's a keynote speaker, beautiful, brilliant jurist. She finishes her keynote speech, and my judge goes and says, okay, I want you to go meet her. So we run up to Judge Donald, and she says, this is the girl who I sent you her resume. And Judge Donald says, oh, great, I want to talk to you out in the hallway. So we go out in the hallway. I had my interview there, right there on the spot. Judge Donald hired me for 2 years out. So it was my 1L summer. So she hired me to start my clerkship with her on the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit when I graduated law school.
So you get this clerkship. Wow, that's awesome. That's after your 1L year, which happens in a lot of traditional law school experiences. But like you said, not for a lot of first generation, and particularly who are people of color or minoritized groups. And so now you're doing this clerkship, and like you said, you just learned what a clerkship was. Now you're getting an offer on the spot, interview in the hallway. That's outstanding. What a great story. What did you decide to do next after you've secured the clerkship, but you have 2 years to kind of prepare for it?
Yeah, so I went back to law school, and I knew that I needed to get to work. So I joined clinics that focused on writing appellate briefs to federal courts so that I could get hands-on feedback from professionals who have led the field. So I took a class with Dean Kamaker, who I mentioned earlier, who was monumental in the affirmative action cases. And I just wrote briefs. So I wrote several briefs in that class, and he gave me feedback, and I exposed myself to the process of judicial nomination so that I could understand the judiciary better. So I did a clerkship or internship with the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I just really immersed myself into this appellate space so that I can understand what I didn't know.
Which was probably a lot, right? Because most people don't know this stuff, right? So respectfully, you were very intelligent, educated, but this is just a big, like, black hole for most people. I served on the federal JNC. I'm wrapping up my service now, and I try to explain to my students what I'm doing, and they still, even though I teach constitutional law, and we're like, remember the federal judges, District Article 3, they're appointed for life. The president appoints them, and I'm somewhere in this process, and they're just like, they just don't, it's just hard to conceptualize unless you're in it. So you did a great thing and immersed yourself in it so that your learning curve would be a little less steep. It's always steep when you graduate because law school teaches you about law, but not how to practice law. But when you do the clinics and the externships like you did, then you really get to do it and learn much faster. Mm-hmm. So let's go through your clerkship experience. What was that like for 2 years with Judge Donald?
Yeah, so with Judge Donald for a year, I'm with Judge Wilkins on the DC Circuit right now. And, it's funny because the clerkship is the same, but the experiences can vary based on who you work for and what the cases are and kind of just like what your responsibilities are for each position. And so, with Judge Donald is like the mayor of Memphis. She is loved by the community, and she's just such a wonderful human being and mentor. And I just feel like she's everybody's auntie or mother, surrogate mother in Tennessee and elsewhere because she travels a lot. But my experience really felt like that. It felt like I was learning from one of the most esteemed members of the judiciary. It felt like I was getting to know like a long distance family member. It felt like I was thrown in the challenges of like wrestling with constitutional questions, and like I was being pushed out of my comfort zone to be a better writer and researcher. So it was all of that. And I think that my experience with her, it really shaped just my idea of who I can be within this profession and within the appellate space more specifically.
Yeah, I clerked for 5 years. So, trying to remember my first year is like, and I did district court judges. And so I was, on the trial level as opposed to appellate level like you are. But most clerkships are about 1 year or 2 years, depending on the judge. And some judges, especially like Judge Donald, is probably very popular and wants to rotate and give as many people an opportunity as she can, because I definitely know judges who are like that. And then now you've transitioned to another clerkship, which is also very common. That's how I ended up with 2 different judges, and lots of people in the courthouse just kind of go from one judge to another. So what advice would you have for new or current or future law students?
I think my advice would be to not deselect yourself. I think early on when I was presented with the idea of pursuing a clerkship or pursuing an opportunity at one of the firms that I worked for, in my head for a moment, I thought to myself, this is not a lot of people like me get these opportunities. I think that there's someone out there that's probably better suited than I. And I would just encourage law students not to do that because, you're not in the room. You don't know what they're looking for. They could be looking for exactly what you have to offer. And so I would just say that if you're interested in something, really take the time to learn about it and put your hat in the ring because you never know what happens.
Yeah, my version of that is let them tell you no. Don't tell yourself no, okay? Don't self-reject. Because I've had students who I have consider a clerkship. Oh, I can't get that. My grade, wait a minute, slow down. Yeah. The judge will tell you no if you're not a match, but you got to at least apply. Same thing with the JNC. I've talked to so many young lawyers about, like, have you thought about being a judge? Here's some things you need to do. Oh, no, not me. There's so many other people who can do that. I said, yes, there are, and you're one of them. So,
that's right.
You never know what the White House is going to be looking for, what the electorate's going to be looking for, what these firms or judges are going to be looking for. And none of this is a true meritocracy, right? It's a combination of who do you know, and your personality, and your work experience, and all kinds of things that we don't have access to necessarily. But if we make ourselves available, just like you did with Judge Donald, and you're just there and ready, then it can all come together. So we talked about your work in the appellate space. You're still there, and it sounds like you're going to continue to pursue it. How did you get involved with the Appellate Project?
Yeah, so the Appellate Project launched my 3L year in law school. And there are several mentorship programs. Some of them are great, some of them, are less effective. And so when I saw the Appellate Project, and that the Appellate Project was focused specifically on appellate practitioners and making sure that they kind of bridge the gap between law students of color and learning how they can make their way through this space, which has been historically white and male, it really piqued my interest. But again, I kind of had like this little doubt in the back of my mind, like it's a mentorship program, how formal will it be? Sometimes you get matched up and the mentor is, you guys might not click for whatever reason. But I decided, okay, well, I'll go for it. During that time, I was preparing for a moot court competition, and there was a line of cases, like criminal sentencing cases, and I kept seeing the same name over and over again on the briefs. And I was listening to the oral arguments, and I was like, this advocate is like insanely talented and has argued all of these cases. And so when I got my mentorship mentee match from the Appellate Project, I looked at the name and I was like, Michael Dreeben, where have I heard that before? Like, who is that? And so I go to Googling and I'm like, this is the same person that I've been listening to for the past month preparing for moot court. And I think that was like such a pivotal moment for me because it spoke to the level of investment that the Appellate Project was making. Like they said, we're serious about this work. We want to put you in touch with not just appellate practitioners, but the best ones, and also the ones that are committed to seeing the future of the appellate bar being diversified. And so that really caused me to buy in, and I'm so happy that I did, because now some of my best friends are other mentees who are part of the program. We still get lunch and it was all virtual. And so that speaks to just like how powerful the Appellate Project's presence resides in law students back then and now, and also just the willingness of people who bill, they could be, for their hour that they're spending volunteering, they could be making thousands of dollars billing at their law firms or wherever their respective jobs are, but they decide that they want to spend it with us.
That's outstanding. So it sounds like it was virtual before being virtual was in vogue, right? Because with COVID, everyone, I like to make this joke that I was using Zoom before it was popular, because the journey to Esquire was always hybrid, because we have two schools that are across the bridge. They're really close geographically, but if you've ever been in Tampa Bay and seen the traffic, to get over those bridges. And so we had a hybrid, and then now everyone's kind of into virtual. But talk to us a little more about how the program works. So we know there's a mentorship mentee match with law students and practitioners. How long is the program? How do people apply? And what is the commitment from the student? Because like you said, you have to buy in, right? You're already really busy. So to ask you to do another thing, it really needs to be worth your time. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the flagship program is the mentor-mentee program. And the way that works, you put your preference in, you apply to the program, you're accepted. You put your preference in for who it is that you would like to mentor you. So you have an option of I want somebody who's in the appellate space that is close to me geographically, or I want someone who is a Black attorney in this space, or I want someone who's young. And so the Appellate Project then goes and kind of matches preferences to put the student and the practitioner together. And then after that, really, you can carve like your own relationship, your own schedule. So for me, when I was in the program, I would meet with my mentor once a month. But there are people who meet once a week. It's just really whatever agreement that you come to with your mentors. And so it can be as, as time consuming as you want it to be or not. And so that's the first thing. And then after that, there's a lot of programming. And for me, that was my favorite part because we have judges come, former law clerks at every level, former law clerks who have clerked for the U.S. Supreme Court, for various federal courts of appeals, various district court judges, and also state court judges at every level. And so it really gives you exposure, and it allows you to have one-on-one conversations with folks, and also go into breakout rooms with different judges or law clerks. So there's a lot of programming like that. And then there's also writing workshops. So you have an opportunity to write a memo or to write a brief, and we'll have real practitioners go through and edit your work. There's also clerkship services if you're interested in applying to a clerkship. It gives people an opportunity to have someone put eyes on their application or their writing sample. So there's just a ton of different things that the Appellate Project offers that I think helps to, help someone who was in my position who did not have access to that information have it at the right time.
Okay, that's excellent. So there's, like you said, the flagship mentoring program, and you can carve that out with your mentor. And then there's all the wonderful programming and opportunity to meet with other judges and law clerks. And I like what you said, there's also the state level. So when we talk about it in our program, we remind people that even trial court judges on the state level have staff attorneys. They have different titles, but you're playing a lot of the same role. And depending on what area of practice you want to go into, that may influence which judge you clerk for, and even as a staff attorney. And of course, there's always an ability to move between judges, between divisions, and get more experience. So if someone's interested in the Appellate Project for applying or to be a mentor, how would they get involved? How do they get in contact with the Appellate Project?
Yeah, so this year, the program started in October. So I would assume that it starts again in October of next year or maybe January. So we're gonna toy with the dates. But they would go to theappellateproject.org. And that has all the information of how you can apply to be a mentor or apply to be a part of the program. You can also sign up for the newsletter, which it will give you that information and in enough time so that you can make decisions on whether this is the right fit.
Yeah, and I follow you guys on social media. So you guys are on LinkedIn and Facebook at least. I think maybe Instagram. So if you're active on social media, not Instagram?
Not Instagram yet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because that's where the young people are. We got to get to where these young people are so they can find us and we can find them. But definitely LinkedIn and Facebook. And what I love about the social media is they share profiles of their mentors and mentees and what the benefits they derive from the program. So that can give you a good sense of whether it's for you as well. Because like you said, there's a lot of mentorship programs, but like everything, you just have to find a good match for you, something that works for you and that you can connect with. And so make sure to check out the Appellate Project. And thank you so much, Briaunna, for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we're going to put her information in the show notes. Make sure to read those show notes, check her out, connect with her on LinkedIn, connect with the Appellate Project, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe. And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.